Hi, I'm Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video of the week. And the topic for this week is learning to use the text tools, and this is part 2 of what's probably looking like a 3-part series about you learning to use all the tools to do with lettering in the Floriani software. And so previously we looked at the text tool up here on our top toolbar, and how when you click it there are several text options, and we looked last video at creating sort of standard horizontal text, circular text, vertical text, and text along a specific baseline. And so things that we'll talk about today are a little bit more about using the special path baselines. We'll talk about how to edit the path. We'll talk about how to save and make your own custom paths. We'll talk about enveloping and how you can use the enveloping handles to create special shapes from the letters. And we'll talk about true type fonts and how to create lettering from fonts that are not the ones that come with the Floriani software. And things we'll leave for next time are probably things like monogramming and maybe some of the other font tools like Font Play and the font importer. And so that's our plan for today. If you haven't already watched part 1, I recommend you go through part 1 where we talked about some of the basics of using the text tools. And so we're ready to get started. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on the text tool and select the text along a path option and click to get started. And the first thing we get to do is choose the path that our text will appear along. And so you go ahead and you choose your path, and then it gives you the first letter along that baseline, and I can type in whatever letters I want. And click apply. And so you'll notice that they fit along the baseline that we selected. And we looked at last week how we had the ability to use the little blue handles to move our letters along that baseline. So I think that's kind of where we left off, and I thought we'd continue talking about baselines because there were a few things that we didn't cover. First of all, when you choose a specific type of baseline like this, there is an additional option in the properties box that's called the path align. And notice currently it's set above the line, but you can also choose to center the letters along the line, place the letters below the line, or even create a reflection, which is an interesting effect. So let's take a look at below the line. Click apply, and you'll see how now my name comes below the line as opposed to above. And then center is pretty obvious because that's just going to put the letters right on the center of my line. And the one for reflect was kind of neat. In fact, let's do this. I'm going to right click over top of the words and choose where it says text paths, which will allow me to choose a new text path. And I'll just choose like a basic kind of path like this. It's like a nice arc, and it'll put my name along that arc, and we'll put it above the line. And click apply. So if I wanted to do a neat effect with the reflection, what I could do is use my select tool and simply click copy and paste so that I have 2 copies of the exact same text. And then on the second, copy of the text, I'll select, so right click to go back to edit text mode. And once I'm in edit text mode, notice that I have the ability to change where the text aligns along the path. And so I was going to try reflect, and you'll see what it's going to do is flip the text over so that it looks like a reflection along a line. And so that could be a really neat effect. Maybe you change the color of one of your text or something and make it look kind of like a reflection of the other line. Anyway, that's all part of the text paths option. Here, let's just select that second one. And so now we have the ability, I'm going to right click and just show you to go into edit the baseline. So once you choose this path baseline, if you want to change it in some way, you can choose to go into edit baseline. And that will allow us to, right click to add new points to the line, or just move the lines around and create your own line. If you want to see the text sort of snap to your line, you need to right click, because right click's always sort of the complete task for the Floriani software. And so now I've made an interesting line. It kind of, to me, it looks a little bit like the letters are scrolling down a tobogganing hill and up, and around the other side or something. I don't know. Anyway, maybe you really love this line that you've created and you would like to use it again. And so in that case, we right-click over top and we choose Export Line. An export line takes you specifically to the place in the Floriani software where we save these font lines. And in fact, I've looked at doing this myself before, and it's so great the way it just shows you where to place it. So you don't have to go looking under your C drive and program data and Floriani and TCU and fonts and line frames. That's where they get saved. Anyway, we'll call this one downhill. Or maybe it's uphill. Down and up. How about that? Whatever. Oh, I got a semicolon in there. That may cause a problem. I'm not sure. But it's best to stick to just letters is my suggestion and numbers. Anyway, down and uphill. Save. Okay, great. So at this point, at any point in the future, all I have to do is click on my text tool, choose text along a path, click to get started, and look, now we have down and uphill as a new option. And so basically it just puts the letter A over top of it, and like before, you just have to type in a bunch of letters and click apply, and they'll align along your new little sort of special path that you created. So yeah, that's the text along a path option. What we'll talk about now is enveloping, and so I think I'll just start with my basic sort of horizontal text frame and show you that. We'll zoom in over top. So I just want to highlight again something we learned in our first video, and that is that we are currently in edit text mode, and I can tell I'm in edit text mode because of the little blue and the little gold handles that could be used to adjust my letter spacing. Well, and also just to highlight that if I click on my select tool, I'm no longer in edit text mode, and I'm in, I guess, transform mode or select mode, where I could do different types of editing to the letters. But if you want to go back to edit text mode, you right click to say edit text. And it's when you're in the edit text mode that the handles around the outside of the box also change. So in the previous video, we talked about the blue handles, how they move all of the letters after the handle, and that the gold handles would allow you to move just one letter independently of the rest of them. Okay. And you also have the ability to right click on there and tell it to reset your frame. Kind of puts everything, it's like a go back to default kind of tool, I guess. So when you're in edit text mode, the center handles will cause a curved, we call this the envelope. So when you have a text frame, that frame can be enveloped to create unique layouts for the lettering, and you can right click to reset your frame at any time. And so the corner handles will create a perspective to the lettering. So if you wanted to make a banner, you could move them like this. Now if I right click and reset my frame and then right click, and notice the options here. So first of all, you can change the type of text frame. Right now it's a normal text frame, but I could convert this lettering to be a circular text frame, a vertical text frame, and a path text frame, or a monogram frame. But then within the normal frames, I can automatically choose all these different envelope shapes. So if you wanted to have a convex top with a concave bottom, you could just quickly choose that, and it makes a convex top and a concave bottom. And so if you want them both to be convex, you can do that. So this is an interesting tool. It's called enveloping. I'll right click and reset the frame. Also, while you're in edit text mode, there are a few other handles. Notably the ones that kind of look like home base. There's one on the top left, one on the bottom right. The one on the bottom right will stretch your letters without changing their height, keeping the letter spacing the same and expanding the width of the letters. And so these are things that you would also have the ability to do using the properties box, but doing it here is a more visual effect to it, okay? And so changing the letter spacing here does not change the letter spacing in the properties box. In other words, if I make this larger, that still stays at 0. I can still come in here and say, let's add an equal spacing of 1 in between the text, and that will also spread it along the line. But they don't kind of like update each other when you change them. Just know that. Now, the one that's on the top, what that does is actually resizes the text. So if you're working in edit text mode and you're like, oh, I just need it a little bit bigger, or actually I just need it to be a little bit squishier, you can quickly do that. Also notice the black diamond down at the bottom. That's going to give you the ability to visually add the slant to your text, so almost like kind of making them italicized. And then the last one is just simply a rotate option that you could use to put your text along some sort of a different baseline that wasn't perfectly along the horizon. And so all of that, if you click on the select tool, notice we're back in our select mode where we can use the transformation box to do things like resize our letters. And so the handles are different. Notice when I'm in the transformation mode that the corner handles resize resize with the proportions continuing to be the same, and the side handles stretch the shape longer but not taller. You still have the rotate button, so their handles are different, because the center handle here does not do the enveloping. That's when you're in edit text mode, and now you can use the enveloping option. So as you can see, the text tools really are quite powerful, and once you understand how all the tools work, really quite easy to get, the text that you want. Whoops, I almost lost my microphone. One more thing for today, you guys, and that is true type fonts. And so now when you click on your text tool and you select any style and you click on your workspace, it's always going to start with whatever letter style you used most recently. And so in my case, I guess that's Anna. But the checkbox is here. If I choose TTF, then my font selection box has changed to be the fonts that are included in your computer, like the fonts that are installed in Windows. And there can be all kinds of fonts. You can definitely add new and interesting fonts to your computer, and the software will convert them into embroidery as you go. And so notice that I converted the text into a font that doesn't exist in the Floriani software using, it can work with either a true type font, or it'll also work with an open type font. Now, sometimes when you're converting letters into embroidery, and it's basically automatic digitizing, you would have the ability to edit the text if you wanted to, take control of the stitches that were created. Maybe you didn't like the way the software created the stitches, and in that case you'll have to learn about, and I'm just going to select this. If you didn't like the way the stitches were appearing in the letter Y or some letter, you can edit them, but you'll need to right click first and do what's known as break up text. And so right now our text is still a text segment, which I could use edit text to go in and use the little handles and envelope that text, all of those kind of things. However, if I want to change the way the letters stitch, I need to right click. I guess first of all, I'm in edit text mode, so what I'll have to do, because the option's not there, is click on the select tool, then right click and choose break up text. So when I chose break up text, the text looks and stays the same, but notice in the sequence view it now has the letter M and the letter Y as individual segments, and notice what they are. They're satin paths. And so the software took that shape, automatically digitized it as a satin path, and now you have the ability to edit it like you would any satin path. So if I choose my shape tool, I can see the way the stitches go. If I wished that the divide was going this way instead of that way, I can move it, click apply, and that will update the stitching. If I wish these stitches came along the horizon, I can adjust my letter spacing. And so if you're not sure what I'm doing right now, then there will be other videos that you might want to refer to that are kind of about the learning of the basics of how to use the different styles of embroidery, because I'm talking about a satin path right now and how you can control with the shape tool the yellow inclination lines and the orange divide lines. So at the end of the day, I will give you a tip about the text, and that is I've noticed that it works, the TrueType font works better when it's converting to TrueType fonts than starting with. In other words, let me show you. If I create a new text segment now, and I click down here to put down my letters, it automatically stitches them in, but I've got some very long satin stitches. I can tell because they're looking missing, and what's happened is the software has not used the same sort of formula for auto stitching them. And what I'm trying to tell you is I can do a better job. I think part of the problem is the size of them has been sort of updated. And so what I'm telling you is if you uncheck TrueType fonts and use a Floriani font, and then check off TrueType fonts and go back to the same font as you had before, you'll notice the results get more organized. And I'm not quite sure why that is, and I did make notes to see if we can't continue to make our text tools even smarter, but for today that's a little tip. So what the tip is when you start a text segment in TrueType fonts, they're not as organized as if you uncheck the TrueType font and start as an embroidery segment, and then choose the TrueType font. And even if you choose the very same TrueType font, it seems to give a more organized result. So I'm not sure that you're meant to have to do that, but that's a tip that I came up with for you guys for the way it is today. We'll see what we can do about that. But in the meantime, there's one more thing about TrueType fonts. And so when you click on the text tool and you use your text tool to create TrueType fonts within the text tool here, the software automatically converts them into stitches. But you do have the ability, and I'll just show you, to click on your text tool and use this text tool option called Import TrueType Font Artwork. And that is different. So now when I click on this tool, I'm meant to type in my text, and so I've already typed in the word Trevor, but you can make it say FTCU and Trevor. Okay, and then you select your letter style. So in this case, you get a little bit different selection window. First of all, you can select from all the different styles in your computer. You can also choose, maybe not all letter styles will have this option, but some letter styles will have a bold option or an oblique option or a bold and oblique option. You'll have the ability to choose the size based upon, I guess, letter sizes are sort of described in points. And so 72 being the biggest and 8 being the smallest. But what I find is I usually bring them in big, and then I can always size them down smaller anyhow. So what I'm saying is I'll choose the letter style and the size and say OK, and then OK. And so it brings in FTCU and Trevor, but not as embroidery, just as artwork. And notice at the bottom of my sequence view, there are all those shapes. They're simply artwork shapes. And so now you can select those artwork shapes and do anything that you can with the Floriani software with an artwork shape. I can click here to make it a run stitch outline, or click here to make it a satin stitch outline, or click here to use a fancy motif outline. So now you can get kind of really interesting results with your text. If you wished it was filled in, then click on the fill. If you wished it was filled and outlined, well, then you know you probably need to click copy and paste, and then the one that comes on top, convert that to be the outline. And so it's pretty much as easy as that. If you want a different color, you can do that too. So this is the benefit of having the ability to create artwork from letters, is now you can bring them in. Maybe you didn't even want to embroider them all. You could save the artwork pieces as an SVG format and use them on your cutting machine. And so, as you can see, really there is a lot to talk about when it comes down to lettering and learning to use the lettering tools in the Floriani software. And so I hope you enjoyed today's video, which was part 2 of the series. So we'll come back and have some more lettering videos again in the future. Part 3, we'll talk about the monogramming tool. We'll talk about the font play tool. We could even talk about the tools menu for our font importer, and how those are all different tools that we haven't really learned about yet in this series, as well as the perhaps a different video yet to go through the Lettering Master, create a font tool, which will give you really a great idea of exactly how Lettering Master does add something pretty awesome to the FTCU program. But just know if you own FTCU, you're not expected to have this little red text tool. The only reason that one exists is because I have activated the Lettering Master software. And so all that for another day. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and bye for now.